Hey everyone, Pam Gregory, astrologer. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the second half of April and the full moon that we have coming up in Libra on the 16th. Now, just to remind you, we are in an incredible year. I said this way back in January in my themes for 2022. It is increasingly eventful, tumultuous, chaotic, turbulent, and at the same time, absolutely divine, because they're two very obvious realities, two very different realities operating at the same time, but I'm going to be getting into that. So there's a feeling of speed here because we are now into Aries season. Certainly from the 20th of March, the sun entered Aries. Aries is always linked to speed, things happening very quickly, often in a kind of contradictory manner as well, I think, as we're seeing. All the planets are moving direct until the 29th of the month when Pluto moves stationary retrograde. Again, that increases this feeling of momentum. And we are already within eclipse season because we have a solar eclipse in Taurus on the 30th of the month. And whenever we have eclipses, we feel them up to a month before and up to 6 months after. And it brings with them sometimes speed, but certainly intensity, because they represent pivot points. And very often there are permanent changes for us personally or in our world at the time of eclipses. So huge things are happening in our world. I mean, nobody can deny that. And it's interesting that the big conflict between Russia and Ukraine happened within 2 days of the US Pluto return. And I think that's very significant because obviously the US is very much part of this whole picture as well. And this has created, whenever we have war and destruction, it is just absolutely horrific for people. So that is really, with that Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, has brought in this massive wave of compassion and heart opening by many, many people across the world, and a heart linking between people. And so it's very much part of that Jupiter-Neptune process as well. Now let's talk about the full moon. The full moon happens on the 16th of the month. It happens at 11:54 a.m. Pacific and 7:54 p.m. UK time, and it is at 26 degrees 45 minutes of Libra. Full moons tend to bring things to a head, to a conclusion or a culmination or completion. So see where 26:45 of Libra falls in your chart and see what could be coming to completion at that time. Also, very often you see the fruits of your labor in a personal sense, but also very linked to shining a light on what you haven't known before, shining a bright light. We have a lot of bright light with all this photonic light that's pouring into our earth right now, but a full moon is also another kind of peak moment in that, shining a light on what we didn't know, revealing secrets. So let us look at the chart for the full moon. And as always, I've set this for London. I live in England, so if you're not in the UK, just ignore the clock face, ignore the houses, simply look at the signs where the planets are sitting and the aspects between them. So I'm going to come and talk about Libra in a moment, but one of the strongest aspects we see here is a tight T-square between Pluto at 28 of Capricorn, Sun 26:45 of Aries, Moon 26:45 of Libra. So this is really highlighting power as an issue, how power is being used in the world. And we could see a strong assertion, even stronger assertion of power at this time. It's very, very intense. Whenever you have hard aspects, as I said before, between the Moon and Pluto, a great deal of emotional intensity comes up, and that tends to happen at a full moon anyway. So we are shining a light on how power is used. And that may be our own individual sense of power, but certainly it will be external power, because really this was set up, well, certainly in January 2020, when we had that important Saturn-Pluto conjunction, it set up a strong theme of looking at the potential abuse of power. And indeed, just taking Pluto on its own, Pluto entered Capricorn in 2008, and part of Pluto's purpose in moving through Capricorn, whenever Pluto is moving through a sign, it tends to reveal the shadow side of that sign. And so part of its important job in Capricorn is to reveal anything which is not of the highest integrity, the highest transparency and accountability, any corruption that is existing in top-down structures of all kinds, corporations, institutions, governments, etc. So Pluto is also getting very close to the anaretic degree. It's at 2833 of Capricorn. It comes to the anaretic degree really more next year. We'll spend quite a lot of next year at 29 degrees of Capricorn. And it will be moving out of Capricorn, well, initially into Aquarius in March 23, hover between the two signs, and then fully in 2024, it will move into Aquarius and it will have done its job in Capricorn. But while it's in there, particularly at these last couple of degrees, it is going to be digging deep on anything which is not for our highest good, which is not of the purest light and the highest integrity. And I think you understand completely what I mean by this. Now, Pluto is linked to the underground, the underhand, often the criminal even, in its rulership of Scorpio. And so it brings up secrets that are linked to those things, that are linked to sexual issues, ruler of Scorpio, financial misdeeds of all kinds. So this full moon in that tight T-square to Pluto is potentially highlighting those things, those secrets that could come to light at this time. And indeed, if we simply take the South Node in Scorpio, the South Node is always directly opposite the North Node here in 23 of Taurus, although it's not normally shown in a chart. South Node in Scorpio is also about digging deep into financial, sexual secrets, issues of betrayal, issues of toxicity in all kinds in our world. So this issue of power is a seesaw, because it may also invite you to question how well you have used your power in your life. Have you always defaulted to external authority, as I think many of us have through most of our lives? Or are you now coming to a point where you're saying, no, I am going to take my power back? And that doesn't have to be aggressive or violent. It can simply be a very clear statement of intention that I know my sovereignty, my power is internal. I live from the inside out, not the outside in. I have a sense of center, anchor. I understand my rights, etc. Because if external authority is found wanting, nothing will change until we, as people, step into our power. It's a seesaw. It's simply a seesaw. And this is the time to do it, because as we move towards those last couple of degrees of Capricorn, the seesaw is going to get much more wobbly at the, let's call it the institutional end, the top-down end, because once it moves into Aquarius, this is much more to do with the power of the people, grassroots up power, councils, assemblies, people coming together of like mind and growing their own parallel society, which is happening right now. We don't have to wait till the future. We don't have to wait till next year even. It's happening right now. So, and actually, this T-square is highlighting this long-running square between Eris, 24 of Aries, and Pluto. Now, this has been running since beginning of 2020, all through 2020, all through 2021. It will run until October of this year, really until Pluto starts to move out of Capricorn. And it's been very clear how that's operated. Eris is the goddess of discord and chaos. She is warrior energy, sister of Mars. She's very linked to protests, demonstrations, riots even. to defend the rights of the unrepresented, the unheard, the marginalized, people on the periphery, people who are not part of the mainstream. And she really calls for total inclusion, total justice and inclusion. So this full moon, because the sun is very tightly conjunct Eris and the moon is opposing Eris, is really highlighting that Eris-Pluto square too. That clash between individual rights on the street, individual rights in Aries, and the clash with Pluto and Capricorn, top-down authority and government control. However, Pluto is operating very positively if we're thinking of issues of power. It's in a trine to the North Node. And the North Node in Taurus, this is our future collective destiny. I think it's so interesting it's in Taurus because this is the Earth, and Uranus in Taurus as a symbol is new Uranus, Earth, Taurus, new Earth. And so this trine from Pluto is very much saying that we need to step into that power that we feel as individuals in order to galvanize and build new Earth even more strongly. I think that's a really clear and incredibly positive message. And also, Taurus encourages us to turn back to the simple. Be in nature, grow vegetables, have your feet on the grass. Just feel that connection that is so simple and so available and so free for all of us, wherever we are. We can always find a local park or somewhere to go with a patch of grass where we can just connect to nature. Even looking out of a window at a tree. I know in my first flat in London, in central London, the only nature around was a tree out of the window, and I just used to stare at that tree, and it was so sustaining. So find nature, find grounding, find earthing, sustaining. That's another way we're going to step into our power too. So that's an important aspect too at this full moon. I think it's interesting also that Saturn is in an exact, by degree, T-square to the nodal axis, 23 of Taurus, 23 of Scorpio. Now, on the one hand, this can be greater attempted control coming in at this time for your safety, more rules, more regulations, more tightness. This could be around the internet, Aquarius, linked to the internet, but also a general sense of freedom. So it could be operating in that way. And of course, how well that works is, remember, down to us as well. On a different level, remember that Saturn is about building for the long term, and Aquarius is about new structures, new networks of like-minded people. So that's what's happening right now. We are building for the long term, new hubs, new communities of like mind for the long term, and building new elements of all kinds, new networks, educational, medical, social, financial, health, lots and lots of elements to that. It's a whole new society that's being born. Another aspect of that T-square Saturn to the nodal axis is what are you leaving behind? Because there's no doubt we're leaving the old world behind us. We're never going back to that. But it's also what are you leaving behind personally in terms of people, relationships, circumstances that no longer serve your growth. And I think for many of us, we're going to be moving through this very, very big transition of that shift. It's really a jump, not just a gradual shift. It's a jump away from the old, away from where we don't feel uplifted by people or circumstances, and we are magnetized towards a very different future of people who just light us up when we're in company with them. So that's really lovely too. Just before I leave this this sun moon as well, this full moon, the moon here is very closely conjunct Haumea. Remember, she's linked to the Hawaiian goddess of fertility, a great symbol for new earth, she's regenerative creative energy, birthing babies from over her body. And the full moon is highlighting that very powerful symbol of new earth. magical. In Libra, the moon is really calling on, in a very unequal society, a very fragmented society, I think we'd all agree, it's calling on us all to have more balance, more harmony, more fairness, more justice in society. And also Libra is one of the two signs, the other one being Sagittarius, linked to the law. There are a lot of really important legal cases going on right now, and they may come to fruition, some of them at least, at this full moon in Libra. That'll be really interesting to see, because they are focused on the issue of how power has been used in the world. No doubt about it. How power has been used in the world. So yeah, super strong theme there. The other, I think, positive thing to focus on here, which is lovely. It's a lovely conjunction between Uranus and Mercury here, and this can be visionary thinking. Uranus is very future related. It's the higher octave of Mercury. So it can be very intuitive, but very, jumps that can be downloads, sudden insights. It can be brilliant, original, new ideas suddenly coming in, problem solving, suddenly coming into you. I think you just get a flash of, yeah. And again, this may be very linked, because it's in Taurus, of how do we practically start to build new earth, particularly around food systems, agriculture, etc. Now, as I've mentioned, way back in 2018, I think I was starting to talk about this when Uranus first entered Taurus, that this again can go two ways. Uranus in Taurus being on food supplies and agriculture, can be more engineered or industrialized food production. I just read today that I've heard that the FDA in the States have said the sale of real meat will be banned after 2024. I don't know if that's been fully approved yet, but that would be the kind of trend that would lead to more, for instance, lab-grown meat. In scientifically engineered food. If that's not what you want, the other way this operates is going back to the simple, going back to the rhythms of the moon, going back to biodynamic, growing and farming, forming your networks, again, Uranus, forming your like-minded networks to really find land, grow food together and support each other. It's a very different trajectory from the other one. That's why we have two very different levels of reality operating from now on, and increasingly divergent. I think we can probably all feel that divergence as we move through here. Now, what is lovely here is that Libra is ruled by Venus, and Venus is now in Pisces, where she is exalted. It's one of the most beautiful places for Pisces for Venus to be. It's feminine, it's fine, it's creative, it's aesthetic, it's the spiritual seeker. It's really beautiful, and it's boosted by being co-present in that conjunction between Jupiter and Neptune, which has only just happened 4 days before. Exactly. But of course, it's still operational here, and it will be really operational until Jupiter leaves Pisces to move into Aries on the 11th of May, which will be very different energy. But all I've said about this Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, I'll put the link for that specific video below, is about this spiritual tsunami, this massive wave of beautiful, fine, high-level energy that is just, it's just like surfing. It's the biggest wave you've ever ridden, carrying you higher up the beach than you've ever been. But it is about a significant shift in perception, in dimension, into a frequency, a world that was always there that we couldn't see before until we got the frequency match. And at this time, we are going to be getting the frequency match. I mean, we're well into that energy already, have been since early March, really February, if I'm honest. So people have been Their dreams have been bigger, their dreams have been more vivid, they're more psychically sensitive, they're more tuned into energy in lots of ways, feeling it, seeing it in bigger ways. So this is one of the most beautiful aspects we have this year when we look at it in the very positive expression, the most positive expression. And Venus will actually come to be in a triple conjunction with Jupiter and Neptune at the end of this month, which will be absolutely beautiful. And part of this is, in order for us to get more spiritual, Neptune, meaning Jupiter in our lives, to live with greater spiritual meaning. And what's lovely is that very fine Jupiter-Neptune conjunction is closely sextile the North Node, giving us more opportunities to feed into our future collective destiny with a very strong spiritual component. And so this is like a takeoff, this is like a lift-off, particularly with the trine from Pluto here too to the North Node. This is like a surge of not only stepping into our power, but stepping into our spiritual awareness, that we are multi-dimensional beings. We are shifting at speed into crystalline, angelic, fine energy. It's connected to source, connected to all that is, connected to oneness. Just very different quality to the nitty-gritty of the 3D that's operating in our world. So this is just, it feels like humanity's going over a waterfall. Water, because it's Pisces, we are going over a waterfall at speed here with this conjunction, and we can't stop. It's absolutely, the planets aren't going to stop. We are trucking on through this massive evolution of humanity, which is unstoppable. Nothing can stop that. People can try and delay it, but it can't be stopped. That's what's really wonderful. So we might as well get on that spiritual bandwagon right now and make the most of it, because the more of us do that, the faster it's gonna happen. I think also, just to say, I'll stop sharing now, but the other thing that's very important as we move through the month, on the 25th, we have a kind of edgy, reactive semi-square between Mars and Eris. And then 2 days after that, the moon moves into Aries, also sign of the warrior. So we've got a couple of edgy days, but even by then, we are into the energy of Pluto being stationary retrograde on the 29th. And as always, planetary symbolism is magnified at those times, and we'll feel there's a good week to either side. So we'll feel it, from 22nd, 23rd of the month, and we'll feel it because that station of Pluto is holding right into the Taurus solar eclipse on the 30th. So again, issues of power, secrets coming to light, underground, underhand, sexual, financial. I keep getting visions of a very long piece of knitting, but line by line, it is being unraveled with increasing speed. Narratives are being unraveled at increasing speed. The Jupiter-Neptune conjunction is about a mass awakening. It's about a mass unveiling, the veils falling from our eyes, particularly around issues linked to media, any toxicity or drugs or medicines, that kind of thing. So this is a very interesting period, but because as that happens, of course, there's going to be pushback, big time pushback. So be very aware of those two different realities. One is very fear-based, control-based, very panicky, very much about for your own safety, your rules, your regulations, etc. And the other path is aware of all of that, but doesn't engage negatively with it. We can be aware of tragedy in the world and do something practical or do something energetic by shining brilliant light whenever there's darkness and density, but we don't get drawn in negatively, because then we're just feeding more of what we don't want. Our energy is so powerful, and we're going to really understand this better and better as we move through this year. This year is a massive tipping point. It really is. And just think about, Pluto moving through those last 2 degrees of Capricorn really says it all as the big picture. And also, of course, we're in the context of the US Pluto return for the next 2 years and all that's going to happen in the US. If you have planets in Pisces, anywhere in Pisces, this should be a good year for you, in that Jupiter is moving through it, and that only happens once every 12 years, particularly if you have planets in the last few degrees, anywhere from 23 to the end of the sign, because the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction is very much highlighting that and really giving you one of the biggest spiritual rides of your life. And then, as I say, later in the month, we have this triple conjunction, Venus, Jupiter, Neptune. If you have planets in the very last couple of degrees of the cardinal signs, you'll be feeling probably a lot of intensity. You see where Pluto is falling in your chart and what hard angles it's making to other planets in the last couple of degrees of the cardinal signs, and also even in fixed signs, the last few degrees are going to be highlighted, I think, as we move forwards, not only because of the nodal axis moving, but also because we're into a lunar eclipse in Scorpio in May, 15th, 16th of May. So a huge amount going on here. Really be aware of the ascension being unstoppable, the evolution of humanity, being aware of the physics of light being unstoppable, and be very conscious in your choices. Saturn in the T-square to that nodal axis is like a choice point. Which way are you going to focus? Which wolf are you going to feed? Which path are you going to take? It is more important now than it's probably ever been in our lifetimes, because the choices are so massive. And to me, that there isn't a choice. There's only one way, because that's how humanity really excels and gets into a very different place. Going over the waterfall of Jupiter-Neptune is going to land us in a very different place once this year is over. So I hope that's helped you. A lot of information there. If you don't know where these points are in your chart that I've talked about, you can download a free birth chart from my website. Go to the link in the description below and get a 2-part video series that will explain how you do this from zero. If you want more information about my books, my teaching videos, my long monthly newsletter, just check out my website, pamgregory.com. Have a wonderful lunar eclipse in Libra on the 16th. We'll see what the bright light reveals at this time. It will be intense. We're going into some really intense months here, but just hold your center and just know that a better future awaits us, particularly if we can focus on the light. God bless. Bye for now.